Hi, I'm Dan Bruce, serial entrepreneur, and this is my stack.
Thanks so much for joining me. First episode of This Is My Stack or My Stack. We're still working on the title here. So, for people who are new to this channel, and obviously you will be new to the series, My Stack is a way for us to interview indie hackers, high growth technical entrepreneurs about what they're building their products with in their technical stack. So, Dan, do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself? Obviously, we've known each other for a while now. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself, what you've worked on before, and what you're working on right now?
Sure. First of all, I'm really excited to be here. As you know, I really like the idea of this podcast. So, as I alluded, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I got started in that as many do by becoming a software engineer. I've worked on a load of cool things, everything from video games. I've worked for banks such as RBS and Santander, and eventually I decided to do my own venture. And so myself and one of my best friends started the most boring company anybody could think of. We were in bookkeeping and accounting, but we were very fortunate. We built a fantastic product and got it acquired by Santander Bank in 2019. I'm just at the point now, after recovering from burnout and various other things, where I've started to think about my next venture, and I'm hoping to ship the next version either end of this month, early next month.
That's quite exciting. So you're someone who's kind of been there, done the venture route, had the big exit to the bank, and now you're going full indie hacker, which is pretty exciting. So tell me about the business that you ran before.
The previous business also, it was a mobile bookkeeping product, and so my best friend and I were working over in California as freelancers, and we were really struggling to keep on top of our finances. That would be like our invoices and our expenses. And this is at the time where the major players now, your invoice to go, your QuickBooks, weren't really very good on mobile. And so my co-founder and I naively thought, oh, we're going to build a mobile bookkeeping app and we're going to sell it in a year's time. And so the timeline was a little extended. It took us 5 years, but yeah, we created the best and the fastest growing mobile bookkeeping app in the UK. And at the point we were looking to expand into different countries and start to bring in a lot of the cool stuff around open banking, Santander came along and bought the whole business.
It's like a dream scenario. So you said you thought it was going to take you a year, it took you a bit longer. What did you actually build the whole stack with? And do you think that was like an influence in why it took a bit longer than you thought?
So it's been a huge influence in the stack I've chosen to build my next venture. And so I remember reading on Twitter by somebody much smarter than I that says essentially build your next startup in the stack that you're most comfortable with. And for a long time I kind of agreed until it came time to start my next venture. And I looked back at the stack we'd used and realized A, it was really antiquated, and B, it was really complicated. And so that stack was essentially Express microservices, so Node.js Express microservices, and a combination of MongoDB or MySQL, depending on what suited the needs best. And I've completely dropped MongoDB from my current stack. So my current stack is now, and I'll go into more details why in a bit. But my current stack is React for the front end, including, and I hope nobody gets angry at this, server components all the way. It's how people should be building websites, and I will die on that hill. NestJS for the API layer, Nginx for the API gateway, and Postgres for the database. I've completely dropped NoSQL databases, not because I don't like them. I think they're fantastic, and I moved really, really quickly with a schemaless database. But the times that I was most scared building Albert, that was the startup, was when we had to do no schema migrations, and I was really scared that I was going to kind of break some of the data. And so I've gone completely SQL oriented for this next startup.
Yeah, see, I think for me, I'm very much a move fast and break things kind of guy. Like I fully subscribe to that philosophy, and I understand that non-relational databases allow you to do that. However, I've had the same experience where the amount of time stuff has gone wrong and that's because I don't have the structure and the discipline required of me. With a SQL or MySQL database, it's just ended up causing me more work eventually. And I think one of the key components of pragmatism is sometimes the easiest way is not actually the easiest way, and that's definitely the case with something like a MongoDB. It's not a bad technology at all, but particularly when you're maybe less experienced on the back end, which I am, it can often cause you more problems than times it saves. Therefore, making you spend more time on those problems. So I agree with you. I'm personally at the moment fully into relational databases, but who knows? My opinions change like the wind anyway. Otherwise, this would be a boring show.
I'm sure my opinion will probably have changed again in 6 months' time. But the most scary migration we did was, it wasn't too late into the startup, but we had something like 1.5 million invoices in there, and so we migrated them all from one schema as it is to another, and everything was fine except for a small percentage of customers. And it took us a day or two to figure out that they were old customers with old style invoices that we totally forgot about. So we fixed it, but I just don't want to go through that again. It was a terrifying couple of days because we didn't know whether we'd bought like a load more of the 1.5 million documents as it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're starting talking about millions of documents, all I can think about is the amount of potential things that could go wrong if that data is not tightly structured. Especially if you're talking about financial records, like you are with your previous business, Albert. And moving on to what you're working on right now, am I allowed to say the name?
Of course, of course.
So what you're working on now, Shipt. It is an awesome name because it's all about shipping stuff very quickly and making money, which is what we're all about. So do you want to give a rundown to people about what Shipt is going to be and what Shipt is right now?
Since selling Albert, I've spent a lot of my time mentoring engineers and entrepreneurs and product people and just various types of people involved in building technology products leaning towards SaaS. And I noticed something. It was that they were all having to reinvent the wheel. They were all building, spending much more time in the first 12 to 24 months building SaaS features, account sign up, subscription management, customer service, that quota management, than they were building the actual kind of unique selling point. And after advising and monitoring and helping out so many of these types of startups and people, I decided I'm going to solve that generically. So my mission is to build Shopify, but for SaaS. And I've started with the subscription management side and the authentication side. So essentially, with a very simple client side SDK, it's just a REST API client side SDK, people can use my product and it will easily manage the authentication and the customer management and the subscription management in about 3 to 5 lines of JavaScript.
Sounds very exciting, and I'm actually going to be using it on startup grad jobs in the next few weeks. So perhaps even by the time this video comes out, it will be live on my website. So I'm quite excited to get a lot of that kind of nitty gritty stuff handled for me. So what are you building it with? You mentioned a bit of the stack earlier. What's the full rundown?
Yes, so as I mentioned, React server components, and so there's a reason for that. I am older than I look, I hope, and so I was so I'm used to building what they now call, the cool kids called, multi-page web apps, which I just call a website. And so um, it feels like it's going back to those days where you just create HTML pages and it's just really simple. I think in another life I'd have been a Ruby on Rails developer, so I really love that direction for the front end. And I feel a little bit like Facebook have tricked us for oh dear, Facebook have tricked us for maybe the last decade, creating these whizzy kind of interactive single page applications. So I've gone totally for React server components on the front end. I'm very modular in how I like to do things, and so I have Nginx as a gateway, and that is sat between my React front end and my NestJS monolithic backend. And the real reason for using Nginx is simply for its authentication module. And so what that means is when a request hits Nginx, I can go off to a different service or a different endpoint, authenticate the request, and then by the time the request hits my app, it's fully authenticated, and the app can trust the request, and the apps just focus very much on business logic there rather than authentication. And so it's React Server Components, Nginx, and then there's NestJS backend with a Postgres database. The other reason I like NestJS is, as I mentioned at Albert, we built this probably overcomplicated microservices system, but my mind does design things in terms of modules. So like a customer module or a tenant module or a subscription module. And so what Nest does is it offers me a modular way to build the product. And if, fingers crossed, it gets big enough, it also offers a very nice way to split those modules out into their own microservices too.
So you would say you're pro
No,
microservices
I'm
in
absolutely
general in
not
that
pro.
case? Oh, you're
No,
not? Sorry.
no, sorry. Yeah. So I was pro microservices, and um, I still like the idea of them at the right scale and at the right team size. But everybody should be starting with a monolith, and monoliths can scale really, really big. I think at the point the code becomes hard to manage, there's too much going on in the monolith, that would be the right time to start splitting things out. In terms of scale, I'll just keep spinning up more instances of a monolith if that's needed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of the time people really overcomplicate the architecture of their MVP. I've seen this a million times before where people will build as if they already have 10 million users. And don't get me wrong, I love the ambition, love it. But for me, I'm kind of mindful of the fact that most businesses fail, and you have to be brutal about that. So building a monolith at the start is absolutely the best way. If you need to move into microservices, which again you may not even need to, apart from some very specific situations, then you can do that. And I would also say as well, a lot of time people think they need microservices when actually all they need to do is to reorganize their monolith. Because I try and make a habit of every month or so just have a spring clean of the monolith, because you'd be amazed how much easier you can make it to use as a developer and how much quicker you can make it.
I think as developers, we're all guilty of wanting to do the cool thing, and myself especially. Uh, but it's a bad reason to do something. And so, yeah, like one of the advice I give to a lot of the entrepreneurs I coach is um, focus on one metric, and that metric had better be revenue.
There is no more important metric at all. Well, actually, there is one: profit, and survival, if you can count that as a metric. But it's amazing how people will just run away from it and act like it's a dirty word and say, because we're engineers, we don't need to think about the business. The reality of this is, and I actually tweeted this out the other day, hoping for a bit of engagement bait, but didn't get it. Is that the thing is, 99% of the time, you're either coding to make money or save money. And you just have to keep that in mind and prioritize your tasks as such.
I completely agree. One of the so one of the tweets that I've got a little bit, I'm having a lot of fun with is these: if you've done X, you've shipped too late. And so, like the last one I did is, if you're not shipping SQLite in production, you've shipped too late. But actually, I disagree with the tweets, and this all comes from going through the acquisition process, whereby I had to go through technical due diligence, and some of the scariest parts were explaining bad technical decisions we've made early on to move quickly. And so I think there's got to be a compromise. And so I don't know if this makes me a good engineer or a bad entrepreneur, or vice versa, but I'm always on the side of automated tests. I use Jest and Supertest for that. I even do unit tests. All my code's very well documented, because you never know when you're going to have to take a month away from an indie project, come back to it, and not know where you are. And so I think, having gone through selling a company and knowing what technical due diligence looks like, I'm very mindful of making sensible decisions that are. I know better how to compromise now. Is I think what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And a silly hypothetical. Let's say you're only allowed to do one end to end or unit tests. Which are you
End
choosing and
to
why?
end every day. Like the end to end are about the customer behavior, and that's really what you're interested in. The unit tests, I guess, are a little bit about customer behavior if you're treating yourself, or stakeholder behavior, I guess, if you treat yourself or other engineers. But end to end, if you're giving something to customers, you need to be testing what the customer is going to experience. And I'd even go so far as if you can get a manual tester, then maybe skip the end to end and just let them. No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I'm trying to overcompromise there.
Yeah. And another question I had about your stack. I can guarantee that almost some of the viewers will have misheard NestJS and heard Next.js.
Yeah,
Nest.js is totally different.
it
Why
is.
would you choose that over alternatives?
Because it removes a lot of the boilerplate. So when I was building Express or Core microservices, it was fantastic. It was really easy to stand up an HTTP server and add functionality, and it was very simple how you added that functionality. You just added layers of functions to handle a request, but it got tiresome. And so what I was really looking for was something that was more opinionated. So it defined a project structure for me, modular, because that's the way that my brain works now, and didn't have me writing all the boilerplate. I was essentially just plugging bits into something that handled it all for me. And TypeScript. As I've got older, type safety has become much more important to me. And so I don't know whether that's a because I'm becoming risk averse, but yeah. So it's just a really good opinionated, batteries included modular framework, and that helps you ship products much quicker.
That is a really interesting point you bring up. Do you think your approach to programming, now that you've turned 25, do you think your approach to programming has changed at all? In all seriousness, because you've been coding for I guess about 15 odd years. Do you think your approach to building products has changed in that time?
It has. So you know the meme that goes around where there's like a graph with a, and then on one side there's I'm doing this, and then there's somebody who thinks there's an expert, and then the other side they've just gone back to
Oh, the bell curve meme.
yeah,
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 I love those. I love those when I accidentally realize I'm on the left side of those.
yeah. So I started life as a C++ programmer on some fairly low level systems. And then I went into mobile, and eventually I became a JavaScript developer. And like, who cares about types and type safety, etc. And I got burned quite a few times by not caring about types and type safety. And so, as I'm coming down the other side of the bell curve, and I'm experiencing TypeScript, as it were, and seeing the similarities to C++, although it's not truly type safe, but it's enough. I think I'm starting to feel comfortable again with my type safe language and declaring all my types. And it's not just safety actually. Um, and there's going to be a load of functional programmers who hate me for this, but I think in objects and instances of objects, and so just being able to think in types helps a lot as well. It helps me move more quickly. It helps me document things, and it helps me plan out the structure of features.
Yeah, there's an old saying, isn't there, about haste versus speed, and perhaps type safety encourages the speed over the haste, and that's something I've been trying to do a lot in both in the products I build and both in my career. I'm really bad for just rushing into stuff and going mad, and then be that at work, I'll try and show something to some internal stakeholders well before it's ready. Or I'll try and ship something well before it's ready, which can be a good thing. But sometimes I take that old Reid Hoffman quote of "If you're not embarrassed by your MVP, you've launched too late." Sometimes I take that a little bit too literally.
I think it's a great quote, and I think it may have been misinterpreted in that you should be embarrassed about your MVP, like it might not look the best, or it might not have core features, but your core feature has to be stable and really showing the value that you're trying to give to other people. Otherwise, people will churn out or not like it for the wrong reasons. For example, if it's buggy,
Mm.
um, with one caveat that if the thing you're solving is so painful that people stick around even when it's buggy, you've probably got something that's going to make you a lot of money.
I think you've invented a quote there. I think do one thing, but do it well. Dan Bruce, 2023.
The one I'm trying to get is I hate this. What is it? Move fast and break things. I'd much rather get measure fast and build things.
But yeah, so tell me a little bit about Shipt and like how people can learn more and what they can do if they're interested.
Yeah, so it's I hate this phrase because everyone says if you're in stealth mode, you're scared of your customers, but it's in stealth mode because it's just not stable right now. And like I've just said, I need to ship. It needs to be, and it's only one very thin slice of what a SaaS app should be. It needs to be stable and it needs to have a good developer experience. Where I'm at now. So, how can people get in touch with me? LinkedIn, Twitter, email through you. As we've mentioned, you're going to be my first customer, so I'm rushing to get things ready. I'm looking for 4 more customers, 4 early stage SaaS founders who don't want to go through the hassle of handling authentication and subscription management, and are also willing to come on a bit of a journey as I build out all the other things that help people build SaaSes and kind of getting first exposure to that.
Brilliant. Sounds good. So do get in touch with Dan if you are interested in Shipt, because it's going to be a very exciting product and it's going to save you a lot of time. If you enjoyed this first episode of this new series, please do let me know. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening in, head on over to the YouTube channel. Could really use your support. But thanks again for checking out the first episode of This Is My Stack. And thank you, Dan, for being the guinea pig and being the first of hopefully many episodes.
Thanks, Calvin. It was great fun.